So this is a shot I took with the iPhone 12, and this is how the same scene looks taken with the iPhone 13 Pro. Very similar at first glance. However, I would say that the iPhone 13 Pro clearly has the better cameras for shooting video. Why this is so and whether the upgrade is worth it for the video quality is something we will try to clarify in this video. I'll show you several comparison shots, and as always I'm interested in your personal opinion on the differences. So don't forget to write me your opinion in the comments at the end of the video. I have an iPhone 12 mini here that has the same camera as the regular iPhone 12 and an iPhone 13 Pro. The iPhone 13 Pro got 3 completely new cameras this year. According to Apple, it was the biggest camera update ever. So we're excited to see how it performs. Let's first take a look at the colors and contrast. In these first shots taken with the main camera, you can see that little has changed in the colors. However, the image of the 13 Pro has a little more saturation and also a little more contrast than the image of the iPhone 12. But you can already see in this first comparison that the 13 Pro produces much higher quality images. The image is clearly more detailed and does not have those muddy areas that indicate compression. The 13 Pro not only has a larger aperture but also a much larger sensor. This seems to lead to clear differences already in this first shot. Look at these trees at the bottom left of the image, for example. Here you can see the same image taken with the ultra-wide lens. The differences are very similar to before. The iPhone 13 Pro image has slightly more saturation and contrast, but the biggest difference is in the detail, with the iPhone 12 image also having more compression artifacts. I assume, however, that you can't see this so clearly on YouTube. For comparison, here is a shot with the telephoto lens of the iPhone 13 Pro. Also a very nice shot. The telephoto lens is one of the big advantages of the 13 Pro, because as you know, the iPhone 12 doesn't have one. Let's take another close look at the details. In this case, you see a shot of the valley. You can see the same differences in colors and contrast as before. If we zoom in now, we can also see that the 13 Pro captures more detailed shots. The shot of the 12 looks softer, but perhaps also has less digital sharpness. In this case, however, I don't see as many artifacts as before, which is surely also due to the better lighting conditions. Here is the same scene taken with the ultra-wide lens. The ultra-wide lens of the iPhone 12 can also keep up a little better in this case than in the shot of the castle, simply because the lighting conditions are clearly better. Nevertheless, you can see that the image of the 13 Pro has more detail, especially when magnified. The situation changes again, however, when we compare a shot taken in difficult lighting conditions. In this image, there are very bright areas and at the same time very dark areas. This shot was also taken with the ultra-wide lens. The image quality of the iPhone 12 decreases considerably, especially in the dark areas of the image. You can see that well with this little castle here. Details are missing, the image is noisy and artifacts appear. By the way, the ultra-wide lens on the iPhone 13 Pro now has autofocus, which was not the case on the 12. This can also lead to sharper results. I wanted to show you this shot because the sun is in the frame. Based on this shot, I would say that both cameras can handle the sun similarly well. Of course, there is no sun star, but there are no particularly strong lens flares either. The most important of all colors is the color of the skin tones. This quick comparison shows us that there are actually no differences here. The skin tones actually look identical. You have to use technical tools to recognize differences here. Let's take a closer look at the dynamic range, that is, when there are very bright and very dark areas in the same image. How do the cameras handle the highlights? This is the same scene as before, but taken with the main camera. This time, let's pay attention to the highlights, that is, the very bright areas in the image. Here you can see that the iPhone 13 Pro protects the highlights a little better than the iPhone 12. The difference is not huge, but it is visible. The very bright areas in the image are darkened a bit more to retain more details. You can see that well in this shot. Here it is even more noticeable that the 13 Pro retains a little more detail in the very bright areas. So this is the worst possible scenario for any camera. A dark tunnel with a very bright opening at the end. It's incredible that the iPhone can still show detail here at the end of the tunnel. Most cameras couldn't do that and would only show a bright spot. Now as for the comparison with the iPhone 12, only slight differences can be noticed. The 13 Pro exposes a little brighter in the tunnel. Both shots are noisy and of course do not look outstanding. That would simply be asking too much. Here is another interesting shot with movement. Two things stand out. Notice the slight flickering in the sky. This is typical for the iPhone when there is a high dynamic range and movement at the same time. This flickering is a bit more noticeable on the iPhone 12. You can also see that the iPhone 12 uses a much cooler white balance here. However, this is an exception. In most cases, the white balance was identical. This is a slow motion shot. It was taken in 1080 and at 120 frames per second. It is therefore a slow motion of 20%. The impression here is that hardly any progress has been made. The shot of the 13 Pro looks only minimally better. The situation is similar at 240 frames per second. The 13 Pro has a minimally better image quality here as well. However, both shots don't really look good. I am sure that this can be done better and would suggest that Apple should improve the slow motion mode for the next generation of iPhones. 4K at 120 frames per second should be possible for an iPhone Pro today. The main camera and especially the ultra-wide camera have received a larger aperture. This mainly brings advantages in low light, as now more light can reach the sensor. So let's compare a few shots in low light and see what the innovation brings. Let's start with an indoor shot. This lighting situation is very difficult for a camera to handle. There is natural light and there is artificial light. Many cameras would deliver disastrous results here. The iPhone can handle the situation well. The shot was taken with the main camera. Both shots look very similar. However, you can see here that the sky is overexposed in the iPhone 12 shot, while the 13 Pro retains the details of the clouds. Here we have blue hour. It is evening and already much darker. This shot was also taken with the main camera. The iPhone 12 can still keep up well. You can see a bit more noise than with the 13 Pro and there is also less detail and contrast, but you can still use the shot. It's a different story with the ultra-wide lens. The shot of the 13 Pro still looks really good. The image of the iPhone 12 on the other hand is already very noisy. This shot can hardly be used anymore. The larger aperture of the 13 Pro shows clear advantages here. Now it is nighttime and very dark. The new sensor and the new lens of the 13 Pro can still achieve fantastic and usable results here. The iPhone 12 shot is more noisy but still looks acceptable. I think you'll have to rely a little more on my commentary here, as you can't see the noise that well on YouTube. The ultra-wide lens of the 13 Pro also has its difficulties here. You can already see a clear image noise. The shot of the iPhone 12, however, looks even worse. With the best will in the world, this shot can no longer be used. Before we take a look at stabilization and audio, it of course makes sense to point out that the iPhone 13 Pro has 4 important video features that the iPhone 12 does not. Here you can see a shot taken with cinematic video. Basically, it is the video version of the portrait mode. The result is not always excellent. Often you can clearly see at the edges that the effect is artificial. Nevertheless, it is an interesting feature. Then there is the macro mode, which was interestingly realized with the help of the ultra-wide camera. With it you can do very cool close-ups, for example for B-roll. This is also an absolutely great feature for the video mode. Then of course there is ProRes, the Apple codec that will produce less compressed video files. ProRes is currently only available in a beta version of iOS and is supposed to be released in November. ProRes will save more video information, allow for better image quality, but also produce significantly larger files. And with the telephoto lens, of course, you have another extremely important feature on the iPhone 13 Pro. You get much closer to subjects and have a lens that is much better suited for close-up shots of faces, as it produces less distortion than, for example, the already relatively wide main camera. For me personally, the telephoto lens is by far the most important of these 4 features. By the way, I will soon make another video on the best video settings for the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro, where I will go into more detail on all special video features like the HDR mode, cinematic video and ProRes. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this topic. Besides pure image quality, of course, stabilization also plays a very important role when it comes to the quality of video recordings. With the main camera, we now not only have an optical stabilization in the lens, but also an additional stabilization of the sensor, a so-called sensor shift stabilization. In this first steady pan, however, hardly any differences with the iPhone 12 can be noticed. Here I tried to artificially introduce more noticeable camera shake, but both cameras compensate for them excellently and you can't tell any difference. Now I took a dolly forward and tried to get the shot as steady as possible. You can still easily see the up and down movements when walking. Maybe I'm imagining it, but I have the impression that the movement is stabilized a bit better on the 13 Pro. This is a comparison with the ultra-wide lens. However, nothing has changed in terms of stabilization. Even with the 13 Pro, the ultra-wide lens still has no optical stabilization. The sensor is now read out faster, which could possibly result in advantages for the electronic stabilization, but I couldn't see any differences here or in the other tests. So let's concentrate on the main camera. Here I did another walking test, but this time without paying attention to the camera shake. Here too, I have the impression that the 13 Pro stabilizes the movements better. However, the difference is not huge. Here is another running test which the iPhone doesn't manage at all. Admittedly, the test doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that was image quality and stabilization. What about the audio? Has there been any significant improvement in the audio quality? The audio now comes alternately from the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13 Pro. Especially the recording of the voice is important for a good audio quality. And in case you are new here, my name is Werner and I live in the Italian Alps. So all these beautiful nature shots were taken here in the Alps. For my favorite iPhone accessories, you can find a few links in the video description. What about self-noise? In other words, what noise do the microphones themselves produce? Let's turn up the volume. Now let's listen to the recording quality outdoors. The recording of a voice outdoors can sound completely different. Can you hear a clear difference? Now let's listen to a few more recordings of different sounds. The video has now become much longer than planned. Maybe I'm a bit too analytical sometimes, but I think we learned a lot about the iPhone's cameras. I'm also surprised that the main camera in particular has been clearly improved and that the larger camera bump and the larger lenses do indeed have an effect and are not just a marketing move as some assume. Strong improvements in low light were to be expected and can be clearly seen. So what is your personal opinion? Is it worth upgrading for the better video quality? Just write me in the comments. There will be more tests and tutorials on the iPhone 13 Pro, so stay tuned and see you soon.